I first noticed the house on a Tuesday. It appeared between a florist and a boarded-up tailor shop on Elder Row, a narrow street I'd walked for years without surprise. Elder Row was the kind of place that resisted change, where shop signs faded slowly, and the pavement remembered more footsteps than faces. But the house had not been there on Monday. I was certain of it. It was tall and thin, pressed awkwardly between the buildings, as though it had always wanted to exist, but had only just found the courage. Its bricks were the color of old wine, dark and uneven, and the windows reflected nothing. No sky, no street, no passing cars. Just shadow. Above the door hung a brass plaque, dulled with age. "Welcome home, Elias." I stopped walking. My name is Elias. No one on Elder Row knew that. I stood there longer than I should have, my breath fogging faintly in the late afternoon air. The city moved around me, cars passing, someone laughing somewhere behind me, but the house remained perfectly still, like it was listening. I told myself it was coincidence. I told myself someone else named Elias must live there. Still, I did not touch the door. That night I dreamed of keys. They fell like rain, hundreds of them, clattering against stone floors and wooden desks. Each key was different, iron, silver, gold, but all of them were warm, as though recently held. I reached down to pick one up, and when I did, I heard my name spoken softly, again and again, from somewhere just out of sight. When I woke, my right hand was curled as if still gripping something. The house was still there on Wednesday. The florist's windows were filled with the same wilting lilies. The tailor shop remained shuttered and silent, but the house stood between them, unremarkable now that my fear had dulled, as if it had always belonged. The plaque gleamed faintly in the daylight. "Welcome home, Elias." This time, the door was open. Just a crack. The smell drifted out first. Old paper, candle smoke, dust warmed by sunlight. It was a comforting scent, deeply familiar in a way that made my chest ache. I should have walked away. Instead, I stepped inside. The house was larger on the inside. That should have frightened me more than it did, but curiosity as a way of quieting fear. The entryway opened into a long corridor lined with shelves, bookshelves floor to ceiling, packed tightly with volumes bound in leather, cloth, and materials I couldn't name. Candles burned at even intervals, their flames steady, despite the lack of drafts. The door closed behind me without a sound. I turned sharply. It was locked. Not with a click or a slam, but with certainty. "You're early," said a voice. I spun around. A woman stood at the far end of the hall, her hands folded neatly in front of her. She wore a dark dress, simple but elegant, and her hair was streaked with silver, despite her youthful face. She smiled like someone who had been expecting me. "Who are you?" I asked. She tilted her head. "The keeper, the caretaker, the librarian, if you prefer." "This is a house," I said. "It used to be," gently. "Now it's something more useful." I swallowed. "Why does it have my name on the door?" Her smile softened. "Because it knows you." She led me deeper into the house. Rooms unfolded one after another. Reading rooms, studies, narrow staircases that curved upward and downward in defiance of logic. Every wall was lined with books. Some were labeled neatly, others bore no titles at all. As we walked, I noticed something unsettling. Many of the spines bore dates. Not publication dates. Dates like March 14th, 2008, November 2nd, 2015. Dates that matched memories I had never shared with anyone. I stopped walking. "What is this place?" I whispered. The keeper looked at me carefully. "This is where stories go when there aren't finished." She pulled a book from the shelf and handed it to me. It was thin, bound in plain black cloth. No title, no author. When I opened it, my hands began to shake. The first page described my childhood home in exact detail. The cracked ceiling above my bed, the loose floorboard by the window, the way the streetlight outside flickered at exactly 11:17 every night. The next page described my mother's voice. The next, the day my father left. I slammed the book shut. "This is my life," I said hoarsely. "Yes," the keeper said, "and no." She gestured around us. "Every book here belongs to someone who brushed against this place, someone who lingered, someone who listened when the house spoke." "Where are they?" I asked. Her gaze drifted towards a staircase descending into darkness. "Still here, in a way." I visited the house every day after that. I told myself I was looking for answers, but the truth was simpler. I felt calmer there. The noise in my head softened among the shelves. The house seemed to breathe with me, its walls warm, its silence attentive. I read books about strangers whose thoughts felt uncomfortably familiar, stories that mirrored my fears, my regrets, my half-forgotten dreams. Some ended abruptly, mid-sentence, as though someone had simply vanished. Others ended with a single line written in a different hand: "Welcome home." One evening I found a book waiting on the desk in the central reading room. This one had a title: Elias Morrow, my full name. I did not open it. "Not yet," the keeper said, appearing beside me. "It's not finished." "What happens when it is?" I asked. She did not answer. Time began to behave strangely. Days passed outside, but inside the house, hours folded in on themselves. Sometimes I arrived at dusk and left at dawn without noticing the night slip by. Other times I stepped out only to find the sun still high, as though I had never been gone. My apartment began to feel foreign. My reflection startled me. The house felt more real, more patient. It began to whisper when I walked the halls, not in words but in impressions. A gentle pull towards certain shelves, a warmth near certain rooms. Once I could swear I felt a hand brush mine as I reached for a book. The keeper watched me closely. "You're listening," she said one night. "I don't hear anything," I replied. She smiled sadly. "You will." The book with my name grew thicker. Each time I glanced at it, more pages had appeared. Events I remembered unfolded in ink. Conversations I had forgotten resurfaced in precise detail. Then came pages I did not recognize. Descriptions of the house, of the keeper, of myself, walking the halls with certainty, my steps unhesitating. I confronted her. "You're writing this," I accused. She shook her head. "The house writes. I only tend the shelves." "Why me?" She studied me for a long moment. "Because you never belonged entirely to the outside world." I tried to stop coming. I lasted 3 days. On the 4th, I woke to find a brass key on my bedside table, warm to the touch. Etched into its bow was a single word: return. I did. The house welcomed me with a sigh. The lower floors opened for me then. Staircases I hadn't noticed before revealed themselves, spiraling down into quieter, older spaces. The air grew cooler, the books older, the silence heavier. In the deepest room I found doors instead of shelves. Each door bore a name. Some were scratched out, some were etched so deeply the wood had split. At the end of the hall was a door bearing my name. It stood slightly ajar. Inside was a study, my study. The desk matched one I had once sketched absent-mindedly in a notebook years ago, a design I had never built. The chair fit me perfectly. The walls were lined with books I recognized as my own thoughts, my half-formed stories, my abandoned ideas. On the desk lay the finished book, Elias Morrow. I opened it. The final chapter was blank. Behind me, the door closed. "You can still leave," the keeper said quietly from the doorway. "Some do." "What happens if I stay?" I asked. She stepped closer. "You become part of the house, a voice, a guide, a thread woven into the web." "And you?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "I stayed." The house spoke clearly then, not aloud but inside me. It showed me all the unfinished lives that brushed past it, the ones who longed for meaning, for belonging, for a place that listened back. It fed on stories, yes, but it also preserved them, gave them shape, gave them rest. Outside, my life was a series of half-sentences. Here I could be whole. I picked up the pen waiting beside the book. I wrote my ending. Or so I thought. The last page filled itself as I set the pen down. Not my words, with yours, because this is where the twist waits patiently, like the house itself. You see, the webbed quill does not tell stories. It collects them. And if you are listening now, if this story feels a little too familiar, if you noticed your breathing slow as the candles burned, then the house has already learned your name. And somewhere on Elder Row, between a florist and a forgotten shop, a door has appeared, just for you. Welcome home.